Welcome back to this tutorial, and here I want us to learn something very interesting, and this is what you will be doing most of your time when you're analyzing huge data sets. And that's why it's very important that you learn this technique on how to iterate over data points or over data frames. So it should be basically data points because you're going through each of those data points. So if you remember, we previously had got this data frame called Africa. If it's still on your notebook, it's very easy. Just you need to call it back or just run it. If you have lost it for some reason or the other, which you should have not, feel free to pause the video, copy each of these, and then run it. Otherwise, if you already have it up here as Africa, I think we had it somewhere. We had it here. So if you already had it and it's running, then you don't need to redo this process. I've just posted this for somebody who has just watched this video, or someone who might have lost it for some reason or the other. So now that we have got our data frame Africa, so the key point or the key aim of this tutorial is to find a way in which you can literally access or read each one of these data points, so from 0 to 10. So you can think of it in the case of big data, you might have 1 million data points. So you want to read from the first data point to the millionth data point. So that's a very useful technique. And before that, just as a recap, I want us to learn some of the basic operations of data frame. So one way, or the first thing I want us to do is, if you have got a data set, how do you tell how many points or how many data points it has? A quick way to do that is to use the length function in Python, which is inbuilt. So you simply do len to mean length and specify the name of the data frame. So in this case, our data frame name is Africa. So I'll just do Africa. And if I do that, it will tell me the length of the data frame. So it's 11. And if you can clearly see, we have got 11 data points, although the last one is 10, but it starts at 0. So cumulatively, it's 11. The next thing that I want us to learn is how to access a specific data set or data point. So let's say that I want to access South Sudan. I don't want to access 167. I don't want to access 610. I don't want to access Namibia. I don't want to access Senegal. I just want to access South Sudan. How do I do that? The first thing that you do is to specify the data frame name, which is Africa. And then the next thing you do is to specify the column where your selected data point is. So the column is in country. So I'm going to do that using square brackets, and country is a string. So I'm going to just copy it. So now that I've selected, I know that South Sudan is in the column country. The next thing is to specify the location of the data frame. So it's going to be on the fourth or the this column here. But remember, it starts as 0. So this one is probably going to be the fourth one. So it's going to be dot loc. And then this is the index column, which is 4. So 4. So loc to mean location. So if I run this, it should return South Sudan. So it does so. Again, the first step is to identify the data frame name, which is the whole of this. The next step is to identify the column name, which is country. And then the last step is to identify the position or the row number, which is the fourth one. If I wanted to access the population for that, I will simply change. I'll specify the column to be population. And then the row remains the same. So it's going to return 167. So if I run this, I'm going to have that. So that's very important for the next set of this tutorial. Now, this is just accessing one single point. If I want to iterate or access each of these points and do something with it, maybe just to display or maybe to do some operations, as I will do in our next tutorial, I can use different ways. Pandas allows you to do it in different ways, but I want us to stick to two of the most commonly used, and I think in my experience the easiest one. So the first way is to use iterrows approach or method, and I will do that. I'll explain that. So let me run that. So the way this works is you basically use this function called iterrows to pass through or go over each of the data points. The way it works, the syntax is simple. You use the for loop for index to mean the index, which is this one, this column here that is not labeled. For index, then you follow it by a comma, and then row. So row doesn't have to be anything. It can be anything. So it can be any variable. So in this case, let me just use country to be more explicit. So for index country in, then we go for the name of the data frame. So the name of our data frame is Africa. So if your data frame was DF, you just say DF, but here it's called DF. Our data frame is called Africa. And then now we use the column, we use the function iterrows, and then opening and closing bracket, and then full colon, enter. If you do that, it will automatically tab or indent your next line of code. So for this, I just want us to print the country. So each of the countries, I'll just say print country. So let's see what it does. So you can see it prints each of the countries. So first it prints Kenya, and it prints everything about Kenya, the population, the area. So you can see that population, area, and then it goes to Nigeria like that until the last one, which is Liberia. But this one can be stressful or more inconveniencing if you have got maybe 1 million data points. Imagine printing all of this in your screen. Let's say that I just want to print the country name. How do I do that? So instead of doing print here, country, I'll simply do country and then add square brackets and specify the column name under a string. So it's going to be country, which is the column name. So remember, this is just a variable. So for purpose of clarity, let me just make it row so that it's not confusing with the column name. So say that and then run it. So this time now it's only returning country. If I want to add another metric, maybe I want to print the country and the population, I can simply do a comma here after country, and not after country but after the square bracket, and do again row and then population to print the two side by side. So if I do that, you can see it prints country and the population, country and the population. That is the first method. The second method is using the range, using range. So to do this, again, the syntax is the same but slightly different. It's much simpler. So here I will just say for let's say row in range, but now remember when we use range in Python, we have got square brackets, normal brackets, but now I want to look at the range for the whole of this data frame, the length of this data frame. So I'll simply use len.africa, which is the name of my data frame, to calculate the length and paste it here and then enter. And then now if I want to access, for example, country, I'll just say print the country name. First of all, I start with the data frame name, which is Africa. You do Africa, and the next thing I want to do is specify the column, so square brackets, and what column do I want to access? I want to access country C, then as a country, and then after that I have to do .loc to mean location, and another square bracket, and have whatever I'm using here as my iterator. So I'm using row. So if this was A, remember this can be anything. So I'm using row C, then have here as row. So if I do that, it's just going to print rows. So if I run it, you can see it prints this. Again, this is just any value. So I can say anything here, just like that. But if I do that, I have to change that here also, anything. But this won't be professional. So let's say row and row. Again, the way this function works is, first of all, you specify, or you kind of calculate, find out the length of the data frame. So we are using len in bracket the data frame, which is Africa, and then use the range function to loop through each one of those data points. And then we are printing only the column name. So this is the data frame, the column name, and then .log. If you just wanted to print the first column here, you will say maybe 0, and that will only print Kenya every time. But I want it to print every time, to print a different column name. So that's why I will change here to row. So let me just correct that before I log out and have our bracket over there. So that is how you iterate through each of the functions, or each of the data points, sorry. And this is going to be a very useful skill. I want us to in the next video, I'm going to show you how we're gonna use this skill to do something interesting with this data. So please stay tuned, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend, like the video, and share. Until next time, bye bye.